My name is Thad Broom. I'm an architect, and I have many years of experience of designing homes and designing them in Revit. And what I'd like to do today is show you how I go ahead and design a conceptual design beginning from a home using Revit for architecture. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to use Revit for architecture, but there are a lot of courses on Udemy where you can go ahead and learn how to use Revit if you don't already know how to do it. Now, what you see here is the starting page on my template for residential design. This is actually the first page, the cover page of my construction drawings. Over here on the left in the project browser, there are also a lot of different customized drawings that I have created, or different views actually. Here's the first floor. Here's a three-dimensional view. And you'll notice I have already set up a lot of different levels. If I go to maybe my east elevation, you can see what these levels are. I begin with the ground level at -3 feet. This -3 feet allows for a crawl space. Then I have the top plate here, which is the bearing point for the second floor structure. And at 9'1", that gives me plenty of room to have a 9-foot ceiling. Then I have the space here for the structural elements for the second floor. And then I have a space here for another 9-foot ceiling. And then I have max ridge height. It's showing 32 feet, but that is from the first floor. The maximum ridge height in this area is 35 feet, but that is measured from grade. So I'm at 32 feet from the first floor. Now I'm going to go to my first floor plan again. And one of the first things that I want to do is insert a site plan. Now, I have a site plan that from the civil engineer, and it's a CAD drawing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert this CAD drawing into my drawing. And I can do that by going to the Insert tab. And I have two choices. I can link the CAD drawing to my drawing. And this is sort of a live link, so that if the civil engineer changes the site plan, then I can very easily update those changes on my plan. Now, also if I do that, then I can go ahead and create a three-dimensional topographic surface from the engineer's drawing, as long as he's created a three-dimensional site plan. I don't really need to worry about that right now, though, maybe later. But what I do want to do is I'm going to import a CAD plan. And this just puts it in my drawing as a dead drawing, really, a reference. So I'm going to click on Import CAD. And I'm going to find my plan right here. I'm going to insert it black and white. I'm going to make it manual center, and then go ahead and open it up. And there it is. I'll position it somewhere here between my elevation tags. Now this has been inserted, and notice that I'm in true north. I don't really want to be working in true north, because then I'll be drawing at angles. So I'm going to rotate this thing to create what's called a project north. I need some references to figure out how much to rotate it, though. So I'm going to create a reference plane from here. I'm going to hold down Shift to make sure I go horizontally. And now I am going to go ahead and measure that. Measure the angle. And it is 9.04 degrees. Get rid of that. And select my site plan. And now my rotate tool. And rotate it 9.04. So there's my site plan, and I'm going to make sure that it is nicely centered between my elevation tags there. And that looks pretty good, I think. When I design, sometimes I design from the outside in, or sometimes from the inside out. It all depends really on the project and how complex it is, and whether the function overrides the look of the building. If I'm doing it from the inside out, then what I would do is I would create a schematic floor plan before I even started working with the building to get everything arranged properly so that they function properly. And then I would go ahead and base my building envelope around my floor plan. Now, in this particular case here, I'm going to start designing from the outside in. And the reason for this is, one, I have a very narrow lot, so I don't have a lot of flexibility on laying out the spaces and worrying about running out of room. Also, I am designing in what is called a neo-urban community, and this community has a lot of restrictions on design styles. In fact, they're really looking for what I would call Chesapeake Bay area buildings. And in this particular case here, the client really likes a Victorian style, but they don't have really a big enough lot to do a big Victorian house, but they have plenty of room for a Victorian cottage. And this is exactly what I'm going to design for them. And I have to build this within some very narrow confines there. If you look at the site plan here, I have an alley in the back, I have a street out front, and then I have these property lines that are indicated by these big black circles. And then I have some setback lines. And I have a 5-foot setback on each side. And I have a 15-foot setback in the front. And this is 15 feet from the property line, not 50 feet from the curb. The reason for these setbacks is to provide some fire space between the building on this lot and the building over here, and also not to create too crowded a look in the neighborhood streetscape. So I have to design within this narrow space here, and this is 40 feet from this point to this point. So the next thing that I need to figure out is, what kind of footprint do I want? And for the design, the type house that I'm designing, I really have just a few choices. It can be rectangular, it can be square, it can be L-shaped, or it can be H-shaped. Now, rectangular and square would be pretty easy to do, but probably kind of boring. I don't have enough room for an H shape. We've only got 40 feet here. So breaking that down into thirds would be kind of difficult to do. But I have plenty of room for an L shape. And I like that because the L shape also gives me a cutout area in the front facade where I can have a nice porch. In this neighborhood, they like to have people to have porches, so there can be a lot of interaction between the residents and their homes and people walking up and down the street. So that's what I'm going to do. I think I am going to go with an H shape. Now, in addition to the shape, my design also has to stay true to the design program. And I have developed this separately from this video. I did it before. And I will show you what my program is. Drag this down here. Here's my total square footage by floor. I have 2 floors for a total of 2543, and here's my total construction budget. So I need to design within that. And by the way, I developed this space program using a method that I like, that I've developed over the years. And I teach a course in Udemy entitled Let's Design Your New Home, that shows you how to do my method to develop both your space program and your space cost. And I recommend you go take a look at that if you want to know how to do that. But right now I need to also create a schedule so that I can control the size of my mask so that it reflects my schedule. And I'm going to do that by going to the View tab and click on Schedules, Schedule Quantities. And I want it to be mass, so I'll scroll down here until I find mass and expand mass. And I want to use mass floor schedule. And I'll say OK to that. And I need to put things over in here that I want in my schedule. I'm going to pick level. And then I am going to pick floor area. And also floor perimeter. Probably don't need that, but why not? Let's say OK to that. And there's my schedule. I can go ahead and work later on designing the schedule the way I want it to look. So I'm done with this schedule. I'm going to go back to the first floor plan now. And now we can go ahead, I think, and start creating our mass element. And we do that by going to the Massing and Site tab and create in-place mass. Note I could also place a mass from the library if I had with some predetermined masses, but I don't really need to do that. I'm going to do it in place, and create my own. And Revit is warning me, well, not warning me, notifying me that they have turned on mass elements in this view. They had it turned off so that I couldn't see it. But now that I'm doing mass elements, they're going to go ahead and turn it on. So I'm just going to close that out. And we're going to call this main house mass. And say OK to that. And now we need to draw the shape for our building. And I'm just going to use a rectangle. Actually, I'm going to do two rectangles and I will join them later. I'm going to go ahead and create this mass here, right there. And what I have now is really a rectangle. But I want to go ahead and create a three-dimensional object out of it. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to go to the Form panel, create Form drop-down, and I'm going to create a solid form. I don't want a void form because I'm not cutting it out of anything. So I'll say solid form. I got to select the item first, excuse me. Select the item, solid form, and now we got a good solid form. And if I go to my 3D view, there she is. Nice. Now I also need to create the L, so I will go back to my first floor and I will once again create a rectangle. Select it and create solid form. So I'm in pretty good shape here. Go back to my 3D view. These are my two objects. I'm going to go ahead and align these. They're going to be joined together a little bit later on, but I'm going to go AL and select that face and that face. Notice I'm selecting the faces. And that's one reason why you want to be doing this in a three-dimensional view. If you try it on a two-dimensional view, you'll probably be aligning edges instead of faces. And I want that face and that face aligned. Very good. And now that I've got those together, I can go ahead and apply some parameters to them. And parameters are the things that let us control the sizes. And it also allows us to adjust the behavior, how things act. And in fact, we're going to do that with this L-shaped piece here in a little while. But I'm going to go ahead and create my parameters. And in Revit, we create parameters out of dimensions. So I'm going to come up here to the Align Dimension tool. And once again, it's very important that you select the face and not an edge. And I'll do the same thing for my L. Like this. And now I can go ahead and create my parameters with those. Excuse me. And so I'm going to go ahead and select this parameter first. And there's a label dimension panel here. And that's where we create our labels. If this drop down right, there's nothing there now. So I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to call it main mass width. And I'm going to leave it as a type parameter rather than an instance. And it is a dimension. And it's going to be shown under length in the properties book, which is good. That's fine. I'll leave all of it the same. So, okay, out of that. I'm going to do the same thing here. And this will be main mass depth. I'll say okay to that. And this will be L width. Say okay to that. And this will be the L depth. And say okay to that. Now notice, by the way, if I select this and I come up here to my drop down, they're all listed on here. Now I can go ahead and assign some values to this, and I'm going to do that in the family types property box here. For my L depth, I want that to be 4 feet, so I'm going to type in 4. I can always change it later, of course, and I'm going to hit apply on that. And you can see it automatically zips to 4 feet deep. For my main mass depth, I'm going to leave that. Let's make that say 25. Now main mass width, this direction here is going to be dependent upon how much room I have on my site. I've got 40 feet from this line to that line. These are the setback lines. And I want to get as close as I can, but I do need to leave a little wiggle room for the contractor. So I'm going to make sure I stay at least 3 inches off on each side. So that takes out 6 inches that I got to work with. And I have a wall thickness that I'm going to have to contend with. And I know that I want to create a, it's going to be a 2x6 wood frame with a siding on it of some type, a thin siding on it. And I'm going to allow 6 inches for that. If I was doing brick, by the way, I'd probably allow 12, but I'm not doing brick. I am doing wood frame, so I'm going to have to take off another foot on each side. And last consideration is the materials. Now, I said I'm doing frame. That's true, I am. However, this thing's going to sit on a brick base. And I want the brick base to look nice. It's going to be a design element. And since it's brick, what you want to do is you want to size it so that it can take the brick module. In other words, you can go ahead and lay this thing out with your brick and never have to worry about cutting a brick, because all the brick will either be a full brick length or a half brick length, and that works out fine. So when you're working with brick, and you want to always make sure you design to a brick module, and in this particular case here, I'm going to be using a standard brick, so that module is going to be a 4-inch module, which means that all my dimensions have to be divisible by 4 inches. And the way I do that is very simple, really. I know that all even feet will do it. I know that all even feet plus 8 inches will do it. And I know that uneven numbers with 4 inches will do it. So in this particular case here, I'm going to pick 38.8, which is a brick module and puts me pretty close to my side setbacks. So my main mass width is 38.8. And I'm going to say okay to, well, I'm going to, nah, I didn't mean to do that. Let me go back. (38)8, and I want to apply that. And notice that it jumped out there. Now, for the length of this, I want this to be measured in fifths. And the reason why is because we architects, we like to do things, we like to divide things in either thirds or fifths because it just looks a lot better, and it's loosely based on the golden mean. So I'm going to use fifths in this one. And what I want is I want this to be 2/5 the length of the main mass here. And if I do that, that'll give me room for space to put a room inside, and also nice space for a porch here. So to do that, I have to use a formula for it. So the formula is going to be main mass width and I'm checking the spelling there, it's got to be exactly right, times 2/5, 2/5, and let me apply that, and that works fine. And I'm going to say okay to that. Now I will probably come back to the depth here and fix that a little bit later on, because I want that to jive with my program. So I'm going to say okay to that. And now I need to fix the height of my masses. So I'm going to use the align tool again. I'll just here it is. And it's going to be 2-story, so I want them to go up to the top of plate 2. So I'll click on that, and I'll align that top and lock it. And I'll do length likewise here, and lock it. And there I have my main masses in pretty good shape. It's all one building now, sort of. In fact, I'm going to make it that way right now. I'm going to go to the geometry panel here. I'm going to use the join tool, and I'm going to join this mass and that mass. And I now have one mass element that is going to define the exterior of my building. So what I need now is to create floors in my mass, and I can do that very simply by selecting my mass. Well, first of all, I need to finish the mass. I'm all done modeling this for right now, so I'm going to go ahead and finish mass. And now I can select my mass, and I can go to mass and site, and let's try that again. Here's mass floors. I want to create a mass element that represents each floor, so I will click on that. And all these levels, the only ones that I want to have a floor is the first floor and the second floor. And I'll say okay to that. And now you can see that I now have a bottom floor, a second floor, and I also have a top floor, second floor. Now, one thing that I don't have is a crawl space, and probably the best way to do that is to actually, what I should have done is maybe just copy this thing before well, that's all right, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and create a new mass element. Go to mass and site and in place mass. I better go to the first floor though. And I think what I'm going to, well, I need to move this a little bit down too. Oh, I think I'll just go ahead and trace this existing building outline. So it's going to be an in-place mass. And this is going to be the crawl. Actually, it's a foundation mass. Let's call it that. And say OK. And I'm just going to use my pick tool here. Pick here. Because it's going to sit directly into my building. And OK. I'm going to select everything. Oops, wait a minute. Well, I tell you what, let me do it like this. And I'm going to create form. And it wasn't able to do it for some reason. Let me go to my 3D view and see what's going on right here. As you can see, tell you what, let's delete that. And let's delete that. And let's try that again. Maybe I ought to just draw it. So I will use my line tool. And that's what I want. And there's my solid form. And I'm going to go to my 3D view. And I'm going to move it down. I'm going to finish the mass. And I'm going to size this thing. And I can do that, I think, from probably the east elevation. Best. Yeah, let's AL align to the bottom here. And lock it. And align to grade. And there. And lock it. So now we have our main mass and we have our other mass, and that's good. That's the way you want to be. Now the only thing that I need to do now in this main mass, well, I have to create a roof, but I also want to go ahead and size it right now. If you remember correctly, we had a program that we had done, and we had a total square footage of 2543 square feet. So now I got to create 2543 square feet. And by the way, I might as well align this wall here with that. I'll save the project. So I'm going to align that and lock it. Align this and that and lock it. Align this, that and lock it, and align that. Okay, say though that constrains that to the main building. And now I'm going to go look at my a mass floor schedule. And here's what I have square footage wise. I want to see the totals of this, so I'm going to make some changes to that. Open up my dialog. Sorting and grouping, we'll sort it by level. For formatting, for the floor area, I want to calculate, it says no calculation, I want it to calculate the totals. And floor perimeters, I'll let it calculate the totals there too. And then on, where is it? There it is, grand total. I want to calculate grand totals. And now I'll OK out of this dialog. And I have a 1322 square feet. I need 2543. So I'm going to go back to my 3D view again. Well, actually, all I have to do is select my mass. I'll go to the 3D view. I'm going to select the mass, the whole mass. And I'm going to go to the edit type properties. And here's where I can play with the depth of it to help me come up with the square footage I need. And I'm going to try 25 feet and say OK to that. Constraints aren't satisfied. Oh boy. Let's try that again. I don't know what the constraints are. I'm going to pause this and try and find out what the constraints are that are stopping me from doing this. I think what happened is when I aligned and locked everything to my foundation, that put a constraint on my whole building, and so I have relaxed that constraint. And so now I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of this thing. Once again, I'm going to select my main mass, and I'm going to edit the type properties. And the main mass depth now is 15.6. Let's make it 28. That's a brick module, and say OK. I'll remove the constraints and say OK. And mass floor schedule, I'm at 2289, so I'm still a little bit short. So I'm going back to my 3D view, select this, and let's try 30 feet. And say OK. Uh, 24, 44. I think what I'll do is I need to stay in a mass, a brick module. And I guess this can be 38.8. Doesn't make any difference, does it? Let's see what that does. Now I'm too big. I was afraid of that. Excuse me. Well, let me select the object first. And we'll just go ahead and make it, let's make it 38. And see what that does. That's still too much. Sorry about this. Let's try 32. And that's 25.98. I'm going to leave that there. And I can always come back and change it around later if I have to. But I'm pretty close to what I need to be. And of course, this is the beauty of working with mass elements, because you can take care of all these problems before they occur. And now the only thing that we have to do is our roof. So to do the roof, I think what I'm going to do, though, I don't need my site plan anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, and I'm just going to delete it. And now I'm just left with my mass element. And I want to go ahead and put a roof on it. And by the way, I had paused there, and I went ahead and adjusted the size of this mass element again. And what I did is I made my depth 31.4. And that's odd number, and as long as it's 4 inches, it's okay. And when I look at my mass floor schedule, I'm at 25.47 as opposed to 25.43, and you're not going to get much closer than that. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that. And I'm going to go back to my first floor, and I'm going to go ahead and create a little roof here first, a little gabled roof. And I think what I'll do is I will create a plane that I can draw that on. So I'm going to go to the Architecture tab, Reference Plane, and I'm just going to draw it just like this. And I need to give it a name so I can call it out when it asks me for a plane to work on. So I'm going to call that L front. And say OK to that. And now I'm going to go to my east elevation view, and I am going to work this one first, and then this one back here in the main mass area. And I'm going to have a small gable roof here that dies back into a bigger one here. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe go to my massing and site, and I need to locate the center line of this, so I will do that. I'm going to go and create a line here. Now actually, let me find it here. I'm going to go to annotate, and I'm just going to use a detail line, and I really want to do it from this point here, the midpoint. Just draw it up like that. And now I can create my mass, and I'm going to do an in-place mass again, and we'll call this L roof, and say OK. And I need to set my plane, and I'm going to do it at my L front and say OK. And now I'm going to go to my create here, and I'm just going to use I'll make sure I'm a model line here, and a model line. I want it to be 45 degrees, so there. And I want another one from the other side. And that's going to be 135, I believe, right. I trim those. Let me try that again. And I need one on the bottom. So now I should have my shape, and there it is. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to create form, solid form, and I'm going to go to my 3D view, and it's just backwards. I'm just going to go ahead and I think I'll select this face here and pull it back, and I'll align the front there with the front here, and lock those. So there's my L roof, and now I'm going to come to another view, my east view. No, that's not the one I want. I think I want a north view. There you go. I'm going to create this on this area right here. I'm going to click on, once again, making sure I'm in model line, and I'll pick my work. I'll pick a plane, and it'll be that plane there. And once again, I need a guideline, so I'm just going to maybe create a reference plane. No, I don't think I'll do that. I think I'll go to annotate. Well, I'll just use this line. So there's my center point. And I'll go from here. I want to be at 45 degrees. And from here at 135, that looks good. And from here to there, I'll trim these up like that. I can get rid of this. And for some reason I'm not selecting an element here. I think something may be wrong. Let me look at my 3D. Yeah, you see where that line's drawn there? That line needs to be drawn from here to there. And now let's see if I can. It still didn't work. I have a problem with this sometimes. I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to go try this one more time. A model line. And I will come from that point there. I'd better do this in my north view. I'm going to pick my line tool. I'm going to set my work plane again. I'm going to pick a plane. And that's my plane. Now let me try this again. I go from here to there. And now I've got my shape. And I can create my solid form. And go to my 3D view. And there's my main roof. And I can pull that through. And I'll align this. And I'll align this. Let me make sure I got the right thing here. Try that again. I gotta make sure that I'm picking the exact right thing. This. There we go. Now, I'm going to make sure that I have this mass element here pulled all the way through, because I'm going to join these two so that I just have one roof there. And I will go to my join tool and pick here and there, and I can finish my mass. And there it is. There's my mass element ready to go. Just full while accessing. Okay. So I'm happy, and I now have completed my mass element. And what I can do now is go back and create my floor plans by laying schematically out inside my building shell here. And I'm going to do that in another video. So I'm going to say goodbye to you on this video, and I hope you learned something. And please give me a like, subscribe. I would appreciate that, because I'm going to be putting a lot of different videos on here, carrying this house through to a nice little Victorian cottage. And once again, you might check my course out on Udemy, which is Let's Design Your New Home, where I will be going into this in a lot more detail. So I hope to see you in another video.